Hi guys, it's Teresa. Welcome back to my channel. Before we get started, I just want to say sorry about the lighting. I know it's not ideal. It's so bright outside. I have my ring light right here and it's not doing anything because it's so bright. So I'm sorry, it's a little off. So today I'm going to be filming my March wrap up, and this is actually the second time that I'm sitting down to do this. I filmed the entire thing right after I did my An American Marriage video. If you've seen that one, maybe you've noticed by the end of it, my ears had turned really red, and throughout the entire wrap up, they were bright red and it looked so horrible, and I just did not feel comfortable really like putting that on the internet. At the same time, because I was already like kind of tired and I had somewhere else to go after, I like forgot to mention a book, and I felt like, okay, both of these things combined lead me to like refilm the entire thing basically. But anyways, so today I'm a bit more chill, I'm a bit more focused, and I feel more comfortable like doing this video. So here we are, and let's jump right into my March wrap up. But as always, first let's take a look at my TBR that I'd been planning for March. These are the 10 books that I put on that TBR for the month of March. I wanted to participate in the March Mystery Madness readathon, and I also had some other books that I wanted to read. So I ended up reading, I think, 6 of these books, and that's a pretty good ratio, especially compared to the previous month. And I was able to complete all the challenges for March Mystery Madness. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty pleased with that ratio. In total though, I ended up reading 13 books in the month of March, of which 3 were DNFs. I also DNF'd another book that I didn't add into my stats and I didn't add into my read books, because while I did read quite a big chunk of all the books that I am including, for that book I read literally like 5 pages. So I'll just quickly mention it as having been DNF'd, and that's kind of it. But the other books I have a little bit more of like an emotion and like a review for, I guess. I don't know. So before we get to the reviews, we have to do the stats as always. As I said, I read 13 books, of which 3 were DNFs, and these are my star ratings. So I have 2 1-stars, both of which were DNFs. I have 3 2-stars, of which 1 was a DNF. I have 2 3-stars, 5 4-stars, and finally a 5-star. This is my first 5-star of the year 2019, which is super exciting to me. I'm being pretty stingy with my ratings this year, and this book was just a standout, to say the least. So that leads me to an average rating of 3 stars exactly, which seems to be kind of the norm for me now. Like I always have like an average rating of 3. As far as genres go, I had 4 contemporary fiction novels this month, I had 3 mysteries, 2 thrillers, and 2 romance novels, and then 1 fantasy and 1 sci-fi, so kind of a little bit of everything. For pages in total, I ended up reading 3,901 pages, which means per day I read an average of 126 pages, and per book they were about 300 pages long. For settings, I have 7 books set in the US, 2 in the UK and in Canada, and then 1 each in Japan and Australia. I read books by 5 new to me authors and 8 by authors that I'd read something previously of, and 10 of the books I read were fairly popular, whereas 3 were more obscure. For release years, only 1 book was released between the year 2000 and 2010. All other 12 were written and released between 2011 and 2018. And then starting this month, I also want to include 2 more stat categories. Those are age group and languages. So for age groups, I read 3 young adult novels and 10 adult novels, and languages, 12 books I read were in English and 1 was in Japanese. Now this is never really gonna change, like the ratio is always gonna be largely English, but I wanna try to read more Japanese and more German books, so I'm hoping including the stat is gonna give me some extra motivation towards that. But that is it for the stats. I hope you enjoyed that part, and now let's finally get to the reviews. But actually, before we do, again, just in case you didn't know, because I read so many books this month, and I especially read so many books in the first half of the month, I had decided to do a mid-month wrap-up. So 8 of the books that I am talking about in this video, I have already wrapped up, and extensively reviewed. So obviously I don't want to do that again because that was kind of the point of doing a mid-month wrap-up. So in the cases where I don't talk about a book really in this video, I would recommend you just go over to the other video because for sure I reviewed it and discussed it over there. So as I said, I have 2 one-star reads this month, and both of them I ended up DNFing. I ended up DNFing The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, which I already talked about. I DNF'd this one at I think about 30-40%, something like that. And I also ended up DNFing Dating You, Hating You by Christina Lauren. I DNF'd this one at about 66%, and I'm just now realizing that it's kind of funny that both of these titles have like hate in the title, and I ended up kind of hating them. So that's an interesting little tidbit there for you. I read Dating You, Hating You after another book by this author duo that I'm gonna luckily get to mention later in the video, but I wanted to read something else by them, and I just genuinely hated this book. Everything in it felt so forced to me. The characters had no chemistry. They were very childish and immature despite being in their early 30s, late 20s, and they just had nothing in common. There was no reason for me to root for them, and the book title and synopsis kind of sold itself to me as a hate to love romance, which is so misleading because honestly, the characters meet before they find out that they're rivals for the same job. And the first time that they meet, they already kind of hit it off and they figure out, like realize that they kind of like each other, like on a personal level. So it's kind of not, it's not a hate to love romance at all. It's a like to, like professional dispute / lust / hating each other, and then they get to the love part. Like, it's so dumb, it's so boring. Nothing is interesting about this book. I honestly was just bored to tears, especially whenever they would start like sabotaging each other professionally so that they could get a leg up above the other. Like, it was like a kindergarten scene. They would literally do the most immature, childish things to each other, and I just like, I'm like, I can't root for these people. There's no way in hell that I'm on their side. And I put it up to a vote, and you guys mostly said that I should DNF it. And so that's what I did. And I ended up giving it only 1 star because it was truly bad. And I'm hoping that this is an outlier for Christina Lauren because I would really like to read more by them. But this one was just not good. So confused by my own systems here. Okay, now we get to the 2 stars, and the first is also a DNF. This is Dead Cold by Louise Penny. It's the second book in the Chief Inspector Armand Gamache series, and I also already talked about this book. By the way, though, this is a book that I picked up for March Mystery Madness. It counted for something blue on the cover, but it just did not work out the way I thought it would. The next book I also already reviewed, but not in that first video. I did a specific rant review on it that should have gone up like 30 minutes ago from when I'm filming this. I'm really excited to see you guys' reaction to it because I'm actually very proud of how it turned out. This is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. I had so many problems with this book. The main one is that it seems to me like it's normalizing an incredibly abusive and toxic relationship, and the characters are like actually the worst people in the world. This, by the way, follows a newlywed couple, and they've only been married for a year. They spend the night at a hotel. Another woman in that apartment or in that hotel gets raped, and the man of this couple is wrongfully convicted for this crime. He gets put away to prison, and that obviously has a very negative impact on their marriage. Anyway, I literally talk about this book for 50 minutes in that video, which I believe should be the last video before this one that I uploaded. So if you've missed it, check it out. And let me know what you thought of it, because I know this is a very popular book, but I don't understand why, to be perfectly honest. And my last 2 stars, actually more like a 2.5 star, and that is The Boy on the Bridge by M.R. Carey. This is a prequel to The Girl with All the Gifts, which I read in 2017, I think, and actually really enjoyed it at the time. It was one of my favorite books from that year. But this prequel didn't quite hit the mark for me. It is set obviously before the events of the first book, and so we as the reader, having read that first book, know a lot more about what's actually going on in this world than the characters do, which, by the way, this is set at like a post-apocalyptic time where a fungus has invaded humans, and it's essentially a parasite that turns them into zombies. So it's like a zombie apocalypse type thing. This follows some humans as they, like, scientists and soldiers, as they try to go across the country picking up samples just for research purposes, trying to save the human race, obviously. And we already know more about this fungus, about the situation, than they do. And it's so frustrating waiting for them to catch up. It also doesn't really add a lot of tension or excitement because you are so far ahead of them. And the book is just so long, and the process of them finding this stuff out is truly tedious, and I don't understand why this book was written. It does get better in the second half, where a little bit more action happens. Some more newer things are introduced, but it doesn't necessarily make them all that more interesting. And the ending, the epilogue, that is again set in the future of both of these books, is so bad. It's very fan servicey, it's very pandering, and it truly does not make sense in the greater context of the series, in my opinion. I wish it had not even been included, or if it was included, it should have all gone down differently. I personally feel like it's probably better to skip this, unless you're super invested in this world and you desperately want more story set in it. But other than that, it's not that great, unfortunately. Then I have 2 3-star books, both of which I've already talked about. The first is Detective Conan Volume 89 by Gosho Aoyama, and then also The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater. Again, you can check out that wrap-up, and also for my Raven Boys review, I did a series review for all books, so I will also link that in the cards, just in case you haven't seen it yet. I'm super pleased that my 4 stars make up the biggest chunk of the ratings I gave out this month. I rated 5 books 4 stars. I'm so excited about that. 3 of them I've already talked about in that mid-month wrap-up. The first is Force of Nature by Jane Harper, which was actually more of a 4.5 star. And this I also read for March Mystery Madness. Neverworld Wake by Marisha Pessel, which I also read for that readathon. And finally, My Not So Perfect Life by Sophie Kinsella. My next 4 star was kind of a bit of a random pick. I just bought this on a whim and I read it during the 24-hour readathon last week, and I really enjoyed it. This is Sadie by Courtney Summers. It is I think it's marketed as a YA mystery, but I honestly wouldn't call it that. To me, it's just kind of like a contemporary fiction novel that includes some very dark themes. Maybe that is why it is marked as a mystery. And there is the disappearance of a girl, but there's no usual typical elements that do occur in mysteries. There's no plot twists, there's not really a ton of suspense, and that's fine. I still think this book was great. I just wouldn't really call it a mystery. If you didn't know, this book is partially written in podcast/radio show format, where this radio host is basically investigating the disappearance of a 19-year-old girl called Sadie, and we follow him along his investigation, and we also follow Sadie back when she was in the process of disappearing, because she actually went off in search of the murder of her little sister, who was killed, I think, half a year before that point. I think that format worked really well to tell this particular story. I really enjoyed the radio sections, I enjoyed Sadie's sections, I enjoyed the way that they were alternating, and gave the story the fullest possible picture. The book, as I said, does deal with some very heavy and hard-hitting topics such as child sexual abuse, drug abuse, murder, alcohol abuse, like a ton of horrible things, and it really doesn't sugarcoat any of them. So if you're sensitive to that sort of thing, probably this isn't the book to pick up. What I really appreciated though about this book is the way that it dealt with these topics, because to me it never seemed to like veer into the territory of tragedy porn or like sort of glorifying these horrible things, but at the same time, as I said, it's not sugarcoating them. It's very honest, very upfront about all the issues that come along with growing up in this environment. And it was it just hit you right in the feels, basically, is the best way to put it. So overall, I really enjoyed this book, and as I said, if you can handle these topics, I definitely recommend reading it. And for my final 4-star read, we're coming back around to Christina Lauren because I also read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by them. This book, you guys, I picked it up on a whim because the Kindle version, the ebook version on Amazon was only 99 cents, and I was like, I'm here for it, so I might as well try it. And this book is literally the cutest, funniest, steamiest romance I've probably ever read. I think it honestly is as close to perfect for a romance novel as you can get. The book follows Josh and Hazel, who have known each other since they were like in high school or in college, I think. And Hazel she thinks she's never really made the best impression on him because he seemed to have always been around when she was like in very awkward situations or very embarrassing situations. And because she's just kind of like this wild, free spirit, she kind of doesn't care what people think, but she's very much aware that some people, or many people, consider her behavior to be embarrassing and too out there and too crazy. So towards Josh, she's just kind of always described herself or viewed herself as like non-dateable. And as adults, like 10 years after the last time they've seen each other, they meet up again and introduced by her best friend who turns out to be his sister. And their friendship kind of develops from there again. They set each other up on these horrible dates that they go to together, like as a double date type of thing. And the chemistry between these two people, it is out of this world. They are, for sure, my favorite fictional couple ever. I love the fact that their relationship and like everything that happens later on developed from a friendship. I think books and the media today especially demonize the friendship to the point of where it looks like this is the point of no return, like the friend zone is the last place you want to end up at. And honestly, I could not disagree more. In my personal opinion, the best relationships are the ones that develop from friendships, because in a friendship you are much more relaxed. There's no pressure, there's no worrying about presenting yourself in the best possible light at all times. It's literally just two people getting to know each other with no strings attached, no base where you start off already evaluating the other person, like almost systematically trying to pick out their flaws and like making pro and con lists and things like that. I think that's such an unhealthy place, honestly, to start a relationship from. And I personally, as I said, I think there's nothing better than starting a relationship from a friendship, because you already know the person, you'd hopefully trust the person, you know what you're kind of getting yourself into. And so I love that they started on a friendship level. And it truly shows through, because especially in comparison to Dating You, Hating You, where they literally only met like a few times before they already had like all these feelings about each other, and they were calling their little like 2 dates situation a relationship, and there was really no moments where it seemed like they would even hang out together if there wasn't like a sexual attraction involved. And that is the complete opposite in Josh and Hazel. Like, I feel like these two people are just made for each other. They work super well together. They like complete each other, and that truly is, again, the best basis in my opinion for a relationship. So I love this book. I think it was hilarious. It was so funnily written. Like, it was laugh out loud funny at times. It was cute, it was romantic, and the steamy scenes are honestly, whew. If my ears are turning red again, this time it's not because I just filmed a 50-minute rant video, let me tell you. I just think everything about this book is amazing except for the ending. The ending was a little too like happy ending, let's wrap everything up type of thing. Like, I wish it hadn't ended this way, but I'm just pretending it didn't. So that's also fine by me. And again, I will probably reread this book a couple times in the future whenever I like need a little pick-me-up, because it's just so fun. It is pure, unadulterated fun. And if you're looking for a romance or a cute contemporary or something to just like lift you out of a reading slump, for example, highly recommend this one. It is so good. Do it. get it, read it. And finally, my 5-star read of this month and of this year, I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. Again, I've already talked about this book ad nauseum in my other video, and I highly recommend you go check that out because I like this book a lot. I know this is kind of an unpopular opinion because many people did not enjoy it. I personally think it's pretty close to perfect, and I love it, okay? And I'm clearly so unorganized because I forgot to mention the book A DNF this month that I didn't include in any of these things. That was We Were the Mulvaneys by Joyce Carol Oates. I only read about 5 or 10 pages of this book and I just had to put it down again. It is about a family and like their family history and like everything like that, but it's so slow paced. Like 3 pages into the book, the author describes where their like family residence is exactly, and it's in the most detailed and info dumpy way that is even imaginable. I was just bored out of my mind. Basically, she goes like, you drive away from this town and then you take a left and you go past the post office and then you take a right and you go past the school and this other shop and then you do this and then you go there. And I'm like, do I look like I fucking care? Like, what is this? And I just was already skim reading this book like on chapter 1, so I felt like maybe it's just not for me. Maybe I should just not even go there, I guess. So yeah, finally, with that out of the way, I think this time I included everything in this video that I wanted to include. My goal with the mid-month wrap-up was to make this one shorter, but it doesn't seem to have worked, so I'm very sorry. Hope you enjoyed this anyway. Let me know how your March reading month went and what was your favorite book that you read. Leave it in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Please also don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It really helps me out, and I upload every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. I will see you very soon with another video. Until then, have a lovely week. Bye!